Hello, everybody. Amber here. Welcome back to In Conversation with ATF. My guest today is an animator, a director, a storyboard artist, a godfather of cartoons. He started out in 1978 as the youngest animator at Hanna-Barbera. He is the creator of Cow and Chicken, I Am Weasel, and also Yoo-Hoo Friends. You remember that? I do. I do very much. I used to watch it, definitely. I mean, yeah, because I had the cuddly toys as well, so yeah, that really does. Like, I saw that on your resume. I was like, wow, okay, I've got to bring that up. My guest was a key animator on the Jetsons movie, Jetsons the movie. He was an animator on Once Upon a Forest and the Chipmunk Adventure, as well as many other productions. He was the animation director for the 1980s Jetsons revival and also the Ren and Stimpy Show as well. He worked with John Kay on that. So he was the storyboard artist for Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Ruby Spears cartoon, Deke, it's which companies in between, Fish Police, A Flintstone Family Christmas, Droopy Master Detective, and movies such as Freebirds, Minions, The Rise of Gru, UglyDolls, and also not a film, but Bob the Builder, Ready Steady Build, according to IMDb. I don't know if that's true or not. Is it true?
That's true. Yeah, I did. It was like a theme park. It was like a
Oh,
it was
awesome.
like a yeah, like a 3D experience at a theme park.
Oh, right. Yes, yeah, Legoland. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was about. That's another thing I
Oh,
was talking about earlier.
Legoland. See, I never saw it, so I
I think
never.
it was Legoland. Yeah, I can't remember. My guest was also the head of story for the 2006 movie Open Season, as well as a few of its spin-offs. I know he worked on Open Season Scared Silly as well. He recently directed the film Hitpig, which starred one of my favorite people, Charlie Adler, who also voice directed the cast. He wrote the short No Prom for Cindy, another project which Charlie Adler is involved in, and he's probably one of the only people in the world to ever have their marriage officiated by Charlie Adler. And this list here, right, doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of this man's spectacular career that has lasted nearly 50 years. I am so, so happy to introduce Mr. David Feiss. Hi, David. How are
Oh,
you?
hey,
Hi. Awesome. How are you doing?
doing great.
Great. Awesome. But honestly, just listen to all that. I'm blown away. The amount of stuff that you've done, as I said before we started recording, both outside and inside the industry, it's absolutely amazing. I really do not know where to start. But yeah, I think I do know where to start. In that case, I'm going to start here. We're not going to go chronological, we're not going to do that. I'd like to know, and honestly, this is one that has been on my mind now for the past few months. Tell me a little bit about your marriage, your wedding. The fact that it was officiated by, well, Charlie Adler. Now, how did that all come about? Now, I've heard Charlie say that you and him are really close friends, but how did it sort of build up to him conducting your wedding? I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, well, I mean, Charlie offered it. It's like it wasn't
Oh,
like I went to Charlie and said, Charlie, you have to officiate our wedding. It's because my wife and I we wanted to get married, and
mhm.
Charlie, we're going to get married, and he had met Anne Marie, and he was quite fond of her, and he offered it. He said, I would be an honor to do this at his place too, here in California.
Wow.
And so he offered his house as the venue, and he officiated it, and he didn't do it as a voice either. He didn't pretend to be the red guy or cow or chicken. He was as Charlie. It was like, it was a really sweet ceremony. We had
Oh.
about 80 people from our families were there, and some friends, and it was just a really, really wonderful moment.
Just to clarify, what year would this have been in?
2008.
Okay. I was gonna say because I was born in 2004, I was showing my age. But honestly, going back to the red guy, I just can't imagine like him just doing red guy, just like, do you take this woman
Oh
to
yeah.
be your wife? That would have been funny. But honestly, I'm really glad that you had like a beautiful ceremony.
Mhm.
Um, and you guys have I did read a few interviews before I started, so yeah, I did my homework. You guys have I believe you have a son together, and you got stepsons when you married Anne Marie. Um,
Yeah.
have they grown up sort of watching your shows? I'm not sure how old your stepsons are, but Harrison, I believe, is I think he's a teenager now. Um,
He's 12.
He's 12. Okay, okay. So has he or maybe your stepsons, have they sort of grown up watching your cartoons, or were they introduced to them, or how did it sort of come about for them that, oh yeah, um mom married the guy who made Cow and Chicken?
Yeah, I mean, I did raise them from, the youngest was 2 years old when I got involved in their family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were, I'm their stepdad, and but they didn't really watch a lot of what I did, the
Mm-hmm.
cartoons. At one point, when Yoo-Hoo and Friends was in production, they were super interested in it, especially the middle one, Quinn. He really loved Yoo-Hoo and Friends, and in fact,
Oh,
one of his suggestions became one of the episodes. Like, it
really?
sparked an idea. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
awesome. What was the idea?
Well, it was I don't know if you remember the one called Mulberries, about like the nasty corporate and invented these things like beauty spots, but then it overtook people and they were covered in moles.
That
And
does sound familiar. I think
the
I do
word
remember an episode.
mulberry came from Quinn. He was little and he
Oh.
was talking about mulberries, but he heard it as mulberries, and I thought it was really funny. That's pretty.
That's so sweet. I love that. I really do love that. That's so, so sweet. Well, I'm glad I've heard all these little stories so far. They've really sort of brand up the well, I don't really call it, I don't like to call it an interview. I like to call it a conversation because most of the stuff that I do is very casually laid back and just everything's just anything goes. It's not like fast-paced stuff like that. Sometimes I will ask a question and then me and the guest will go off topic if that makes sense. Um, but let's take it back now, all the way back to Hanna-Barbera. Now, when you first started at Hanna-Barbera, you were obviously the youngest animator, I believe, according to your website. Um, did you grow up sort of wanting to be an animator or an artist?
I did, yeah. Like when I was my 12, when I was Harrison's age, I discovered an 8 millimeter camera in my house, like in the parents' closet. There was a camera case, and I opened it up and had a camera. And I'd been drawing since I was little,
Huh?
drawing cartoons and reading Mad Magazine, and just wanting to be a cartoonist. And I saw this camera, and I read they had the instruction manual, and it said it had single frame capabilities for animation. I
Mm-hmm.
was a big cartoon fan, and I go, oh, this is it. This is the magic. This is how you do animation. So I started experimenting with the 8 millimeter movies. And so I did that all through my teens. And my last year in high school, I got a sound camera, and I decided I wanted, I really do want to work in animation. So it's probably best to do a professional film, which in my mind that it was sound movie. So I animated the Beatles song Maxwell Silver Hammer.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got a stopwatch and I figured out how I could break down the entire song, and I used lined paper, and I made that each one was a frame, and I put down the entire thing was broken down that way, and I've done enough experimenting with film that I knew how to do cell animation. I had bought plastic that was cut into like cells, and had
Mm-hmm.
some or that I would punch with a hole punch, and I had the Preston Blair book, so I knew how to do some animation, my own style of animation, and so I animated that movie, and I used that movie to uh, as like a portfolio piece. I went to Hanna-Barbera, and I was surprised. I thought they were going to tell me you should go to school now with this and come back to us, but they said, yeah, well, we want to hire you. I was 19, and it was like couldn't believe it. It was wonderful. It was great.
That's awesome. Does the original animation still exist, or is it long
I
gone?
have it. Yeah, I have the actual film, and
Oh wow.
I transferred it to videotape, and then I think I have a somewhere I have a CD or
Oh
DVD.
wow. Awesome. Oh my goodness, that is awesome. When you started out at Hanna-Barbera, what were some of the first things that you worked on? Because it was 1978. Obviously, the Jetsons revival hadn't really sort of, I think it was like 83,
The
82,
Jetson
maybe.
Revival. The
Yeah,
Jetson
the
Revival
80.
was 85, I think.
Yeah, I thought it might have been. Yeah. So what were sort of the first things that you worked on for Hanna-Barbera?
Yeah, the first thing I worked on is they had put me with a fellow named Ken Mundy, who was he became like my mentor. They said, you
Yeah.
work. And Ken was an old animator who was younger than I am right now, but at the time, he was 60, and I was like ancient. But
Yeah.
all this experience, and he was I think he worked mostly in advertising and in like film titles. He was like there was a TV series called The Wild Wild West. It was later made into a movie with Will Smith, but at the time it was this Robert Conrad film in the 60s. He did the titles and he animated the whole thing, and it had a unique look. And come to find out, it was unique because he would animate with a grease pencil on cells directly. He didn't even use paper. It was just like that direct, um, kind of a visceral drawing, and that was the title sequence. And so I worked with this guy. He thought differently, and he was kind to me. 19 years old, don't know really how to animate, and he actually taught me some things that I still to this day use in my mind when I draw. I think about what Ken would tell me.
That's actually one thing I was going to ask you. Is there anything that you learned at, I'd say, maybe when you were working for Hanna-Barbera, but like in the later years when you were doing cow chicken that you wish, oh, I wish I learned that when I was first starting out or before I joined Hanna-Barbera or not?
Didn't understand the question entirely. So
So, um, is there anything that you learned later into your animation career that you wished, oh man, I wish I learned that when I was just starting out, or that would have been really helpful when I was getting started at Hanna-Barbera, if that makes sense.
yeah, what I can say is about that is that what I learned from Ken Mundy was never fall in love with the drawing. You can always make it better. Like just don't fall in love with your own drawings, and don't be afraid to push something. Was great advice for me because I was young and I would draw and I think that's fine. And he'd say like, well, you could actually, and he would the left-handed guy. I'm right-handed, so I was always jealous of left-handed people have this style that's pushed in a slant in a different way. And he would do a quick drawing over the top, and I would be like, "Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about." So my mind, I'm always thinking about how to push something, and every drawing has to be in his mind, and I agree with this, stand on its own. It's not like a kind of a wonky drawing. Every drawing is strong because every drawing is as important as the extremes. In betweens are also important.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you on that. Um, when you were working at Hanna-Barbera, did you ever get to meet any of the voice actors who worked on any of the shows? And if so, did you become like close friends with any of them? Or, I'd say, for example, I don't know, Frank Welker, because he was on like 95% of Hanna-Barbera shows at the time that you joined.
Yeah, no, there was no real opportunity for me to meet voice actors at that time because I was working in the animation department.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't like in recording studios, although they did record there on the at the studio at Hanna-Barbera,
Yeah.
going to pass in Hollywood, LA. Um, so I didn't meet any voice actors, but I did meet some legends of animation because Bill Hanna was this producer that the 40s on had been working with Joe Barbera at MGM, and then they started Hanna-Barbera, but they knew all the classic animators that started the industry back when it started.
Yeah.
Fleischer Studios, Dave Tendler was an animator that ended up at Hanna-Barbera. So Bill would always bring in these fellas, and they were around me, these legends from the beginning of animation. But one of the people that was super memorable because it was like one of my heroes, watching cartoons was Tex Avery. And Tex Avery was at the studio. He had an office and he was working on a reboot of the Droopy show. It was an honor. He had a place with him to see him and know, what is it,
That's awesome.
work. Yeah, that was awesome.
That's awesome. Now, before we move on to sort of like the cow and chicken era, I'd like to ask you, if I can remember, because this question just gone out of my head. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I had it in my head, and it's just completely gone. I have no idea what it was. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to give me.
Oh, it's
Yes,
so good.
I've just remembered it. What did you say? Sorry.
Oh, no, no, what is it?
So, growing up, obviously, you cited Rocky and Bullwinkle as an influence. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, I mean, Gene Frey, Bill Scott, Paul Frees, as someone who has studied the life of Bill Scott, from everything that he's done,
Hmm.
I'm just I always get so giddy when someone says, "Oh, Rocky and Bullwinkle was like an influence in my career, or it was my childhood, or something like that." How
Yeah.
exactly did it affect you in your earlier years? And then, if there's is there anything that sort of you incorporated into your future projects from any of the J Ward shows?
Yeah, well, it was different. It was irreverent, and even as a little kid, I enjoyed the velocity and how it wasn't as predictable as other cartoons. Like Hanna-Barbera cartoons were great. They were fun. Yogi Bear is very good, but it's pretty predictable. But the Rocky and Bullwinkle was different. It had the different segments. It had the little segue interstitials, and it was like pretty fast paced. And for a kid, it was like magic, and it made me laugh. The voices made me laugh, but the situations that Rocky and Squirrel would get into, and Bullwinkle would get into were just fascinating to me. But I just like the variety and like the right turns they would do and just a different way to approach cartoons. But and also I didn't really as a kid when you're 4 or 5 you don't understand the nuances like the politics of
No.
the Cold War. And then later on, when I saw it with different eyes and thought this is super clever because they wrote it for adults, but knowing that kids would like it. And that always stuck in my head too. It was really important to don't forget the adults.
I think one of my favorite jokes is like, I think Rocky says something about an A bomb. Oh yeah, Boris and the Sass have got an A bomb. Bullwinkle, what's an A bomb? He's like, why? That's simple. A bomb is what people call our show. And just like all these sort of creative things. It was mainly Bill Scott who wrote most of the segments for the Rocky and Bullwinkle stuff, and I think he might have done maybe like the Dudley Do-Right ones as well. I'm not entirely sure. But by any chance, did you ever meet? Because I know she did a lot of work at Hanna-Barbera. Did you ever meet June Foray before she
Never did.
passed?
I
Did you
was at
not?
no, I think
Oh no.
I don't remember, but like I uh, I did win an Annie Award for Cow and Chicken, and I believe that she was there, like one of the presenters. She was, elderly at the time. That's as close as I got to June Foray. It was
Ooh.
in the same auditorium.
That's
But
awesome though, seriously. To win like an award. Like actually that is a good question. To win an award, like an Annie Award or something like that for one of your creations, how did that make you feel, from the nomination process to when you actually got when you actually won and you had to go up on that stage and present that award?
yeah, that was magical. It was like the whole run was magical about Cow and Chicken because at that point, before Cow and Chicken, I was an animator for 15 years. So I would work on whatever came my way, working at the studios.
Yeah.
Hadn't really even got into boarding to a big way. It was mostly animation, worked in the studios on some features, but I also worked on some TV commercials. And so an opportunity came, the new network, Cartoon Network, was tied in with Hanna-Barbera. They were looking for new ideas. I had just come up with the idea of Cow and Chicken just literally about 3 weeks, a couple weeks before that. It was a bedtime story I told my daughter, who was 6 at the time. And so having the opportunity to pitch that, and it was the magic of that moment, and having them say, yes, we like it, the opportunity to do the storyboard, and they approved that. And they said, we want to do a pilot. And I said, I'd like to animate it. I said, sure. And spent 10 months animating it while I worked at MGM during the day. I worked at night on this pilot. Met Charlie, others, and once the pilot was done, they decided they wanted to do a series. So it was like a magic. It was magic. It was like this wonderful thing happening. It's my own thing, and it's well received. And then to win an award for it, an animation award was very fulfilling. It was amazing.
Nice, nice. So it was Cow and Chicken, the audition process. Was that the first ever time you met Charlie, or had you met him
Yeah,
beforehand?
I had not met Charlie before, so I'd done the board. It's all written, it's ready to go, and now it's time to record the pilot. This is 1994, like I think October 1994.
Yeah.
And so before recording, you have to do a casting call, and I think maybe 100 people came in auditioning for the different roles. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And so Charlie was one of many. I'd never met Charlie. I don't even had no recall of even, Buster Bunny or any of the other previous things that he had done. It was just suddenly this force of nature comes in, and they had everybody laughing. He's, as you know, Charlie's amazing. And he,
Absolutely.
like a lot of people, would audition for all the characters. So he
Yeah.
auditioned for Cow, Chicken, Red Guy, and he was hilarious in all of them. They were unique and very funny, and it didn't sound like the same person doing them. It was like, the modern Mel Blanc. And so, yeah, that's when I met Charlie. And I asked the studio, I said, yeah, what do you want? And they said, well, I'd like to have Charlie for Cow, I'd like Charlie for the Red Guy, and Charlie for Chicken. So, wow, that's not really done. I said, well, what about Mel Blanc? Oh, you're right. So it was, I'm so glad that Charlie was all these characters, because he's the life force that brought this, to being. Yeah, and the funny thing too about Charlie, when he records, he doesn't just like stay in character the whole time for Cow. He has Cow talk to Chicken and talks to the Red Guy in order. He just jumps into it instantly. He doesn't work into it. He just does it. It's like interesting to watch. Just so entertaining.
Well, I took Charlie's workshop classes last, I think nearly a year ago now, last October. And he was such a good teacher. I was the only international student, but he was very charismatic. He was so caring to me, and like the way he was like my kid accent, he was like, you do such a good kid accent. And to hear that from someone who I used to absolutely be terrified of personally, it's just and nowadays I'm just like, I'm in awe of him. I'm like, I'm not scared of him anymore, because I'm like, that's him, Charlie. I'm like, he's just his own animal breed. He's one of a kind, essentially. But I've heard the stories, how he was going into Hanna-Barbera and he was listening to Ellen Green doing Little Shop of Horrors, and that's how he got the idea for Cal's voice. And then for Red Guy, when he was doing the audition and he was talking to Cerberus, instead of yelling it, he was like, Cerberus, like did it in a really cute voice, and that had you all howling and stuff, and just, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh man, he is quite a character. He is quite a character. And I actually have a question here for my friend Julie, she's an artist herself. She absolutely loves Cow and Chicken and I Am Weasel. She does like all of these all this artwork and stuff like that. She would like to know, something I've always been curious about is this one particular piece of concept art where Red's assistant seems to be an alligator. And it makes me wonder if there were any other concepts and ideas for this role before Cerberus came to be. I just find this stage of production super interesting and would love to know more if he has any answers. And it's like a little concept art of a red guy and an alligator. So it says devil and his assistant.
Let me see that. Yeah, I remember doing that. I don't have my glasses here. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, well that was yeah, that was like yeah, that was early artwork. Uh yeah, I did that during the pilot stage, but and so I had the alligator right, exactly. But then I did a little bit of research and saw in mythology there was that character, the three-headed dog, and somehow it seemed funnier to have a three-headed dog with three different heads, but the different breeds. And that's how that came about. Alligators. I think I tended to draw alligators back then. I thought they were funny,
Yeah.
like an easy shape to draw, and entertaining way for me to draw an alligator.
So was there other ideas before the alligator, or did it just go from alligator to Cerberus?
I believe it did. I think, yeah. And if you had asked me if there was an alligator in it, my early stuff, I would have forgotten it. But there it was, but that does make sense. So it would have been directly, not an alligator, a three-headed dog.
I mean, Julie knows a lot more about the show than personally I do. Like, she's very much more into it. In fact, I've got to show you this because this is absolutely adorable. She actually had, because it doesn't exist, she actually had a custom made red guy plush toy teddy. So cute. I've
That's
got to
all.
show it. Have I got a picture of it? I should have a picture of it somewhere. She sent it me. She might have put it on it. She's absolutely obsessed with red guy, and trying to find it. Where is it? Um, hold on. There's a little bit of obviously fake confetti on the screen from the GIF. She
Oh my
had that
goodness.
she had red guy custom made for her.
How cool is that?
Yeah, so that's she obviously doesn't exist. But got one made
No,
for her.
Oh, wonderful.
I know, absolutely. I love it. If they did these official like red guy plushes, like I definitely would buy one. It's just popped up saying 10 minutes remaining. So what I'll do is I'll restart the meeting in about, I'd say maybe 5 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
But real quick before the meeting ends, I'd like to know about Flem and Earl because I don't see a lot of people talk about them.
Hmm.
Who were they specifically based on? If you did base them on anyone in particular?
I didn't. I wanted them to be humans, like Chicken had friends that were humans, and they were just about all equally uh, not very bright. Um, I liked Earl, having the races and that whole time period in young people's life. And then
Yeah.
Flem, I just like the name Flem. I thought it was a funny name. The and the characters came about once the pilot was greenlit for a series. Like I thought, well, they're going to need more people around them, you know, setting it in a school type situation. It's his best friends. So that's how that came about. And the actor who plays uh, Earl is Dan Castellaneta, who is the voice of Homer Simpson,
Mm-hmm.
the amazingly talented person. He brought so much life to that character. And then the guy who plays Flem at the time was probably in his late 70s. He was a guy named uh, Howard Morris. And when
Howie
I grew up
Morris.
watching Howie Morris, and I grew up, watching the Andy Griffith Show. He was one of the characters in that show. He appeared in 5 episodes as Ernest T. Bass, but I always latched onto that character. I thought it was such an interesting, dynamo of just energy. And they come
Yeah.
to find out he directed a lot of those episodes too, and he directed a lot of 60s television. But he also did voices for Hanna-Barbera, other studios
Yeah.
there. But yeah, during the 60s, he was one of the top voice guys. And so when he came in the audition, I remember, oh, Howard Morris, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Didn't have a part in the pilot,
Mm-mm.
but definitely for the series. So it was like he
Yeah.
has to be in there. So this guy who's close to 80 played this 12-year-old, 11-year-old. And he was awesome and wonderful, and it was just a real honor to be to know him.
Mm-hmm. So were you like the casting director? Did you get to choose who was who essentially, or did you sort of like you like I like this person, and then it was up to the sort of higher ups to decide?
The one that I actually asked for was Michael Dorne,
Ah, right, okay.
Weasel. He
Weasel.
wasn't presented. We usually had people come in. There would be a casting director that would bring in a stable of people, like
Yeah.
Pilot was done that way. But Michael Dorne, the character when I thought of Weasel, wanted him to be against type and to have a deep booming voice and not sneaky like the classic
Yeah, like James Earl
character.
Jones-esque
That was
voice.
who I thought was James Earl Jones. And then I was talking to Van Partible, who was the creator of Johnny Bravo at the time. We were
Mm-hmm.
at the studio at the same time, and I mentioned that, and he said, "Well, have you thought of Michael Dorn?" And Michael Dorn was, Worf on Star Trek: The Next
Star
Generation.
Trek.
Awesome voice, and I thought, no, you're right. That is the voice. That's the great voice. So I mentioned it to Hanna-Barbera, and they made the calls, and he came in, and he was perfect, and he's wonderful, and we did 76 or 8 whatever episodes together, and then I hadn't seen him for about 25 years until last month, and then I directed him in a project, and it was really wonderful to see him again after all these years, and he's just as wonderful as ever, charming and wonderful. Uh,
Wow.
he's actually in the UK right now. He's directing a film that he wrote in,
Really?
yeah, he's in London at a soundstage. He's going to be there for the next 5 more months.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Why is everything happening in London? I'm up north. I'm like 3 hours up north from London. All the good stuff happens in London. I can't believe yeah, you didn't see it. Wow, okay.
Yeah,
I presume I presume you would have been
yeah,
close friends with him like Charlie.
yeah. I mean, I stayed really close with Charlie. You know, I just didn't have a project that we could work on together, and always, think of Michael. He's a
Yeah.
tremendous talent and just a very warm individual too. He's one of the best.
That's awesome. That's awesome. A lovely lady named Chris Zimmerman. I believe she was the voice director for. I think it
Yes.
might have been both I'm Weasel and Cow and Chicken. What
Oh
was it
yeah,
like
yeah.
working with her?
Well, Chris is wonderful. She
She's
was like,
Hanna-Barbera alumni. Yeah.
yes, and she was just part of the party. She just like she'd always say, "Okay, it's time to have fun, everybody," because it was just like a giant. It was time to play. She was, "We're gonna play," because that's what it felt like. We were just like, it was just a joy.
Mm-hmm. And what
Crazy.
about? Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
That's it. That was it.
Okay. And what was it like working with Candy Milo and D. Bradley Baker? He played, well, mom and dad, you know.
Yeah.
What was it
So I
like?
just recently reconnected with them at NostalgiaCon. So I
Yeah.
didn't either would be there. I hadn't seen Candy in maybe 15 years, 20 years. And D,
Wow.
I ran into him about 15 years ago. So it had been a long time. Uh, they were similar to the Charlie story. They came in and auditioned because in the pilot, the mom and dad characters are prominent in the pilot.
Yeah.
And Candy had auditioned for Cow and Chicken, and she was great. She's an amazing voice actress,
Wow.
but she was perfect for mom because there was this kind of like this manic quality that she can reach, and that's what the character was. And it's like she's got to be mom. And D, he gets the joke completely. It was like he's like this nurturing '50s dad, but he's also insane. And because they were just legs, it was like a perfect combination for me. I thought, and that's why cast them. And yeah, D, both of them, gone on to like amazing careers. But they were telling me about D that might have been his first role. It was like he was young, and
Maybe.
yeah, he might have done something, but nothing big. This is like his first series and stuff.
Wow. So he says you gave him his first start. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and Candy had not worked a lot either before that.
I think she was in Tiny Toon Adventures with Charlie. She was
That makes
Sweetie
sense.
Bird was her first voice role. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Um,
That was the first role, I think.
yeah, yeah. So whose decision was it to not show the top half of Cow and Chicken's parents?
Well, that was my idea from the pilot that uh, based on me watching '40s cartoons when Tom and Jerry were running around and you never see the parents or the adults or the humans. Similar to Charlie Brown, you never really see them, you just hear them. And in the '40s, it was just legs. And then I thought it would be funny if they only had legs.
Yeah.
That Yeah, and never show it except in the pilot. I did show it. I do a little pull out at the end
Yeah.
and reveal they're just legs.
That is fair enough, fair enough. And real quick before the meeting cuts off in 2 minutes, very, very hard question. If you don't want to answer this, you're welcome to pass it. Do you have a particular or any particular favorite episodes of I'm Weasel or Cow and Chicken?
Oh, Matt. Yeah, I mean, I actually like that Lost at Sea one. That was the one where Flem and Earl and Chicken they or Flem and Earl are by themselves actually, and they just come to and they're out in the middle of the ocean in the fog, and they think they're going to die, so they relive their life and they confess things about they both love cow, and and they come to find out they were in a bathtub and it was the water go crazy. It was just such a like ridiculous premise, and I just like that episode. It always made me laugh.
I love that. That's so funny. And what about I'm Weasel?
And we still like I enjoyed the ones that Adam Burton who did Billy and Mandy, but he started as a prop guy on that show, and then quickly started writing and boarding. And some of his episodes were like so unique and just a different point of view. And he did one. Okay, hello. Um, uh, what's it called? I think I stand corrected. I think it was one where Weasels and he's in prison. It was I remember really liking that one, and Chachi the chewing gum seal. They're like these really ridiculous premises that Adam would come up with. Like, yeah, I wasn't prepared for that one. So I never actually sit back and think that's my favorite episode.
Caught you off guard.
The Lost at Sea one.
Right. So, No problem for Cindy. Now, of course, that's another Charlie Adler project. Now there is a copy of it on YouTube. However, it's muted. There's no audio track. It's been muted. I don't know why. Yeah, so it's like I'm like having to watch it and then just kind of guess what happens. There's no subtitles or anything. But I just want to know what was sort of like the story behind that, because obviously you wrote it with Charlie. There's a lot of people he knows in it. I mean, I think one of the girls who was in Rocket Power was in it. I know Henry Gibson was in it, maybe Estelle Harris. But what was the story? How did you sort of come up with the idea of No Problem for Cindy? And what is the exact plot point? Apparently, it's about it's Charlie who plays a girl who's a 14-year-old or something like that. That might be correct. I don't know.
Yeah, and the other writer was Mike Ryan, and Mike Ryan was like my head writer, story editor for Cow and Chicken I Am Weasel series. So usually after recording, Mike and Charlie and myself would go out to lunch. So we would record in the morning and get out maybe like at 1 p.m. And then we would go out to lunch. And we did that a lot, after recordings. Because we recorded once a week. We were in production, we were like once a week we recorded. It was a set schedule. And one of the lunches we were laughing about, it'd be funny that if somebody was such a powerful actor, they could do any role and be believable. And so we thought of like, I think it was thrown out that the African leader Desmond Tutu playing the title role of Heidi. We thought, what if Desmond Tutu was such a great actor, you'd believe he was Heidi? And that's how it started. It was like, oh, it'd be funny if Charlie, was this 40-year-old muscular bearded man played the part of a 14-year-old girl. And what would the story be? And everybody plays it straight. They don't even react at all that what they're seeing is not a 14-year-old girl. So that was it. That was how it started. So we came up with a concept.
That is awesome.
That was it. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, as I said, it is on YouTube, but the audio track is muted. I think I did ask Charlie's husband, do you have the original master tape? And he said, I think we're sort of going through it. I think he says I do, but I have yet to digitalize it. But honestly, from what I've seen so far without the audio, it does look like a really good film. I'm actually really intrigued now to watch it with the original audio track. But yeah, honestly, it just wow, yeah, man, I can't wait personally. I can't wait. I need to find someone who has it like digitalized somewhere. I don't know why it was muted on YouTube. It's a bit
yeah, and all those actors that donated their time were close friends of Charlie, so including Henry Gibson and Estelle Harris, and I forgot the girl's name. She was in Terms of Endearment. She won an Oscar.
I'll check for you. No Problem for Cindy, IMDb 2002.
Richard Green, I believe, played the dad, and I forgot the woman's name.
So it says Marsha Clark, Dana Davis, Kat Phoebe, Shayna Fox, she's the girl from Rocket Power, Henry Gibson, H. Richard Green, Jocelyn Green, Tess Harper, Estelle Harris, Danielle Jacobs, Brock Peters. That was another one.
Another close friend. He was a character actor. He was in To Kill a Mockingbird. He was an amazing actor. Amazing person, one of Charlie's closest friends. And Henry was a lifelong friend of Charlie's.
So you've got Jennifer Shawn, Philip Van Dyke, and Jordan Wood. That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, because I'm still going through it and stuff like that. That's just Dana Davis's debut. So I don't know what Dana had done beforehand. But that's also a question for another time. I can't wait, because I think I'd definitely love to have you and Charlie maybe together back on my show as a little part 2, maybe a little Cow and Chicken special. I don't know. We'll have to work on it. Okay, so after Cow and Chicken, this is like the aftermath of it. So obviously you've worked on all sorts of different things. You've been a storyboard artist, you've been an animation director, of course you've done Yoo-Hoo Friends. I'd like to talk to you about, of course, none other than Robert the construction worker, Bob the Builder himself. Now, when I saw the Bob the Builder credit on your IMDb, I was like, is that fake? Because sometimes I see fake credits on there, but now that you've confirmed, I'm like, okay, Okay. And obviously looking closer at it, it was the Ready Steady Build series that you are credited for, as well as I think it was the, as you said, the 4D thing at Legoland, I think,
Yeah,
California.
it was some. Yeah, it must have been Legoland. So, but again, I never saw it finished. But I know that was finished, and it was like a 3D experience at one of those theme parks here in California.
Bob the Builder. Oh, here it is. Bob the Builder 4D 2009. It says that it was at the Imagination Theatre in the Imagination Centre at Legoland Windsor. So Legoland Windsor, that's in London. I swear there was one in California, as you said, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah, there
North
is one.
America.
Yeah. There's one near San Diego, between LA and San Diego.
Uh, let's have a look at this. I have no idea. I'm presuming it probably had. It says, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I'm having a look because it says thing like, oh, hang on, wait, no, hang on. Aha! Like, yes, it was a California and Windsor. There we go. I knew it was in there somewhere. I nearly went to Legoland Windsor a few years ago. Never done that. Unfortunately. I'll have to do it with one of my close friends because he lives near there. Anyways, so what was your sort of experience of working on Bob the Builder? Because if I'm sort of reading into it correctly, this is the first time that you had done work for a sort of a preschool audience show, right?
I'm thinking, yeah, you're probably right. But
Yeah.
I did other episodes. Now that you say that, I did work on the series. And that was for a friend of mine who I'd known for many years from Hanna-Barbera, a guy named Paul Sabella. And he had his own studio here in Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles. And he would call me from time to time to work on different projects. I worked with him at MGM on the Pink Panther series. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I forgot about that. I forgot that I'd been working with SD Entertainment. They were the ones that were doing the storyboard and the pre-production for the UK production of On the Builder.
Yeah. Aha! I thought I recognized them somewhere. It says they've worked on a good few things. They've done a lot of Care Bears, My Little Pony. They've done Bratz Babies, so they've sort of done work for the Splash Entertainment, Mike Young. Angelina Ballerina, My Little Pony, Make Way for Noddy, Transformers Armada, the English dub. That's where I recognize their name from. Or was it the end credits of that? I'm not entirely sure. I think it was like maybe the animation or like the dubbing. I don't know. But yeah, sort of working on Bob the Builder. Were you familiar with the franchise when you first started working on it?
Yeah, I was peripherally familiar with it, and it was clearly perfect for children. It was like I remember thinking at the time that this was genius. That just having somebody doing that it would be mesmerizing for a child. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I think I
Well,
was I think I was talking to one of my friends online, and he was like, yeah. So I was talking to someone online, and then so he says to me, it only took me till today that I realized Bob the Builder is actually British because he had grown up with the American dub. I'm like, what? And he's like, this entire time he thought Bob was just American, like he didn't have like he wasn't originally British or anything because obviously they had the US dub and stuff. And I just thought that's so funny. You just think it's just a completely different show. That's so funny. Um, so you worked on Open Season, well, and also Open Season Scared Silly, and maybe a few other tidbits of the franchise. How were you sort of brought on as the head of story for that? And I know you did. You later did stuff, other stuff for Sony Pictures. Sony Pictures Animation, is that what they're called?
yeah,
Yeah, I thought so. So how were you sort of brought on to do the story? Because I love the scene where Elliot is throwing the rabbits up at what you'd think was stones. It's Elliot throwing rabbits at Boog's window. I love that scene. That was all your idea. So
yeah, yeah.
how was it sort of conjured
So
up
how did I get involved with that?
with
Like how
Open
did
Season? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was Sony Pictures Animation was actually a new entity at that time. I think it was formed in 2002. We didn't hire like a staff until 2003 to work on this open season film. And I had a manager or agent at the time who had put my name forward and I had not worked in feature in a big way until that moment. I'd done, animated on the Jetson movie, different things like that, but this was like different. And I've been boarding for a while, and he presented me as as a head of story, and the people there at Sony Pictures Animation went with me. And I think it was basically because of the cow and chicken, being able to have created something that was different, and they liked my style, and I thought it might work for open season. So that's how I got in there, and had a wonderful experience working with Joel Colton, who directed, Tony Stocking also directed, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience. And so, and then fast forward later, like Scared Silly, actually, I directed that one.
Really?
Oh yeah. I have a fond place in my heart for that show too. That movie, mainly because it was like, it looks like it was made for a larger budget than it was. It
Yeah.
was, yeah. So I'm pretty proud of that film.
I think a funny thing that I've noticed throughout all of the open season stuff is that Boog and Elliot haven't really had any consistent voice actors because they seem to change each film or TV show. I'm not sure if you've noticed that or not.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure why. Did you work on open season too? Because I seem to remember that more than the first film.
I did not.
You did
I
not. Okay,
did not.
that's fine. Okay. There's another film I want to talk to you about. Very recent. It's not even a year old. Hitpig. Now I've looked a little bit about this. Now I see that somewhat it's like Charlie was brought into the project Adler. Sort of like I think it was like late into the production, and like it's something about a recast I read on Wikipedia of all places. So I'm just taking this with a pinch of salt. So what was the sort of process of, were you the one to first develop Hitpig? How did Charlie Adler get involved? And then he voice directed the cast. How did it all sort of start for you and then for Charlie?
Yeah. So there was like the end of 2020. So we're right in the middle of the beginning of and I got an email from Dave Rosenbaum, who I knew from Illumination. He used
Yeah.
to, he was my contact at Illumination. And he had left a few years earlier to move to Montreal and work for a company, the Cinesite Studios in Montreal, but mostly he's working for Anaventure that's based in London. So they were working on this film Hitpig. They were developing that. So I wasn't the first director on this, but they were looking for another director to brought in. There was all a director in place, Cinzia Angelini.
Yeah.
Dave, emailed me and asked if I would be interested in working on this film as a director, and absolutely, I was totally interested in like the idea. I knew the cartoonist Berkeley Breathed from, we all knew who he was as cartoonist. We knew Berkeley's work. It seemed ideal. Could work from home during the pandemic. So that's how I was brought in. And the original cast for the Hitpig character was, oh my gosh,
I think it was Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Who I'm, watching I watched Game of Thrones and I love the series. I came into it late and then just like watched it quickly. I just dived into it and watched the entire 8 seasons. And I thought he was the heart and soul of the whole series. I thought he was wonderful. So I thought this is perfect. And fast forward, we did multiple screenings, finished the film, posted it. We did all the post production, Skywalker, and it was ready to be. It was in the can, but they did some focus group testing, and it was decided that because of like the type of voice that Peter Dinklage has, that it might be better to have something a little bit more friendly. Those kids were reacting, oh, wasn't friendly enough, apparently. This was all focus group. So it was decided to put a little bit more money into it and recast, maybe come up with some new set pieces in it. So a year after that, there was production. We got Ted Lasso. Jason Sudeikis came in, and I thought did a fantastic job as Hitpig. He was very funny, very charming. very kind and he was perfect for it. And re-recorded all the lines for Hitpig, reanimated when it needed to be reanimated, and brought in Charlie. So Charlie wasn't one of the original cast members, but Dave Rosenbaum, when I met him, he had originally hired me because of Cow and Chicken. You remember Cow and Chicken? That's how I was brought in originally to Elimination. He suggested, because what do you think Charlie would want to do a voice? And I said, absolutely. It would be great to have Charlie do a voice. So Charlie ended up doing 3 voices, 2 main characters, and he played this lobster, and he played Super Rooster, so which was different than Cow and Chicken's chicken. He did a character, but it's unique, and because Charlie has the ability to embody different characters magically. He was a magic person.
Yeah.
So that's Charlie got involved with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I'm literally just seeing here, it says announced that everyone joined the cast, and then Danny Bunn, I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah,
it says when you joined, Bunn would exit the project and would be recast by veteran voice actor and Feist's former Cow and Chicken collaborator Charlie Adler. So does that mean that Charlie replaced Danny?
Oh, there was never any recordings with Danny. What was his last name again? I forgot.
Bunn.
Danny Boone. I remember when
yeah.
I got involved with the project, his name was like bandied about as or he was being, yeah, we're going to use Danny Boone.
Daniel Farad Hamid. Yeah.
He's a French.
Yeah, I recognize his name from somewhere. Where do I recognize his name from?
I think he's a French comedian. I'd never heard of him, but I looked it up. But the story changed. It wasn't a French character at all, and so that dropped out. So it was
right.
a active character, and then that's when Charlie came in and voiced that, and he also voiced the part of the lobster.
Yeah. And there's one other person as well. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Just the character, the name Louis. I think it was Louis Lobster.
Yeah, Louis. Yeah, Louis. Yeah, yeah. I think it's really. I've not seen it yet. Was it released in cinemas? Because I don't think it's released in cinemas over here.
It was, I believe, because
I don't think it made it to the UK, unfortunately.
UK, okay, well, I saw recently though that it's going to have a release in the UK, or it's going to be on streaming. That's what I understood.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Oh, that's exciting. Flavor Flav is obviously in the film. He voices Chef MC. Obviously, this is not the first time you worked with William Jonathan Drayton Jr. Do you just call him Flavor Flav, or just Flavor, or?
I call him Flav.
Okay. Well, Flav, obviously you worked with on Yoo-Hoo Friends. So how did you sort of meet him and then sort of started working on Yoo-Hoo, and then obviously you came back for
It was super cool how I met Flavor Flav, because I was living in Burbank. You were talking about Burbank earlier, but
yeah.
I lived in Burbank when my stepkids were young, and they were going to a school in Van Nuys out in the Valley of San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And we would commute. It would take about 45 minutes to drive. So we decided, you know what, it'd be better to move closer to the school. So we left Burbank, we got a house in Van Nuys, and it was just a little community, normal, suburban neighborhood, cul-de-sac. Across the street was Flavor Flav. He was renting the house there. And when we moved in, he was the first person in the neighborhood to come out and say, "Welcome to the neighborhood."
Oh, that's so nice of
him. So we talked, because it was a cul-de-sac. We're in the middle of the road. He was like, he stopped his car. We got out and we talked. And he asked, there's no traffic, we can have a conversation. He asked what I did. I obviously knew what he did. Public Enemy. It was amazing. He told me, he goes, yeah, Hanna-Barbera, man. He goes, I always wanted to do a voice. He's like, Yogi Bear, I can do Yogi Bear. Hey, Boo Boo. He's Flavor Flav, and he was just doing Flavor. And it was just a coincidental that after meeting him in that moment, I was working on a project where I had a brand new character that I thought, oh my gosh, he would be the perfect character for this. And I said, hey, would you ever thought of doing a voice? And he was like, man, that would be awesome. We dialed up his manager on his phone, said, talk to him. And I talked. And this is like that initial meeting in our neighborhood. I'm talking to his manager, and the manager says, if Flavor wants to do this, we'll do it. Even though it was a super low budget, he was just like, he goes, you know what, you got me. I've never done animation before. You're gonna have this is the first time Flavor Flav done any animation. And
That's
he was
awesome.
awesome. He was like such a unique personality and character and person. And he's he's infinitely creative. He's like an amazing, not only is he a musician and writer, he's like a warm person. And I thought it does come through in the character. He's got this, it's not, it's not a classic voice actor. He's not trained as an actor, but man, he's got personality to spare. And we did 52 episodes of Yoo-Hoo and Friends, which was like one of the highlights of my career, actually working on that series because it was so unique and different.
That's awesome.
So that's how I got Flavor Flav, and that's why I added him to the Hitpig, because I had a character that we had a character, it would be we didn't have a lot of lines. It would be like one day's work. And I said, hey, wrote to him, and he wrote back and said, yeah, let's do it. And he came in. This is all during the pandemic, so he was at a studio in Las Vegas where he lives now, and I was in my home on Zoom. I directed all of Hitpig by Zoom, except for Jason Sudeikis. At the end, I was in person for that. The pandemic was over at that moment. It was the week after Ted Lasso had season 3 of wrapped, and he came back to LA, and I worked on that, so it was great. But he was the only one I was in person with. But yeah, we got Flavor Flav to record ADR, which is like animation's already done, and he voiced the actor, and he just did great. I just love his voice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Speaking of Ted Lasso, this is like a really random question. Are you familiar with the whole Welcome to Wrexham FC thing on Disney Plus? Or
I'm aware of it, but I haven't seen it. And I've heard interviews with both guys. So Ryan
Rob
Reynolds.
McElhenney, Robert
Yes,
McElhenney,
right,
and
right, right, yeah.
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And the genesis of it, I find it so fascinating. And like Game of Thrones, I'll come into it late, and then I'll like probably binge it. But yeah, I'm aware of it.
Okay, because I always like, every time a lot of people when I interview them who live in LA, they're like, so they always bring up Wrexham FC in some fashion, which is I live not far from Wrexham FC.
I know.
I'd say I'm only about a half an hour drive from it. I live like just literally just up north from it, not far. So where they're always like people are always like, oh my goodness, when I do a Comic Con the UK, you have to get me into Wrexham FC and stuff like that. And I'm like, honestly, I've never actually been before, but it's just so fascinating to think like, years ago no one knew what it was, but now everyone just knows. It's like, and then my dad's always like, oh, why couldn't they put our local football club instead, put our city on the map? And just
Sure.
I think it's crazy, honestly. It's really cool though, seriously. Are you still in touch with Flav?
Flavor Flav?
Yeah.
I mean, I every year on his birthday, I sent him a text. This year he didn't respond. In years past, we were friendly. He's a very busy person.
Yeah.
And nice to know that yeah, and we're no longer neighbors. Like it was just that brief moment in time.
Yeah.
Across street from each other. I moved away from there. And that was a rental for him. His main residence, Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm. And you've done a little bit of voice acting yourself because there was a thing. You voiced Santa Claus on Yoo-Hoo and Friends, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like to sort of step into like Charlie Adler's shoes and to do voiceover? What was it like?
It's fun, but it also, like kind of like hammers home how amazing it is, these guys that do this professionally, because it's not easy. You think it'd be easy, but it isn't easy to voice a character because it's a different skill set. And,
I
admire what people do. I really do.
Yeah, definitely. It is a talent. It is a talent. Sorry, my friend is just texting me, the girl who I mentioned before, Julie. Yeah, I just showed him just a quick view of your page. I'll have to text him back in a second. There's 10 more minutes left on the Zoom, so I'd like to finish off this interview, David, by talking about Comic Con appearances. Yay! So now that you're doing so I'm not sure if this was recently, but you're now doing Comic Con appearances, because you were just at NostalgiaCon. With Charlie Adler, both of you are now represented by Celebworks for Comic Con appearances and stuff like that. How did that sort of come about? And was NostalgiaCon your first ever convention as a guest?
It was. I've been to animation festivals before. I've been invited, but this was the first time for something of this nature. And so yeah, it was fun. I mean, I was at a booth or a table next to Charlie Adler, and then to my right was Carlos Alazraqui.
Carlos Alazraqui,
Yeah.
yes.
Who also had done a guest voice on I Am Weasel.
That's so cool. Yeah, Carlos is a really, really close friend of mine. I'm most likely will be seeing him when I come out to LA, but there's a running gag that I said a quote in the interview I did with him, and he liked it so much I actually got it on a t-shirt. I think I did something and I said, sorry, it's the autism in me. And he was like, I love that. And I'm like, you do? And I was like, I ended up getting a t-shirt that just says and it's just autism in really fancy writing in me.
How cool is that?
Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, he's really lovely. But yeah, honestly, I'm not sure how did you start sort of getting represented? Did you want to do Comic Con appearances? And just meeting all these fans for the first time as a guest. What was it like for you?
well, the first part of the question was how I get involved. It was through Charlie. Charlie said, "Hey, with these people, you should be there. You get opportunity to see, people that know the show." So I said, "Yeah," and they said, "Yes, please." They brought me in, and it was so rewarding to see these people coming in that knew the show, young people that had discovered it like yourself
Yeah.
right after the original run.
Hmm.
And there was these three from Arizona that actually learned some of the songs from Cow and Chicken and sang them to me at my table. It was like it was the Legend of Sailcat. They sang in harmony. These three young people. One girl was playing ukulele, and then the two gentlemen. They all harmonized this beautiful version of the Legend of Sailcat. I don't know if you ever saw that episode.
I think I did. I think
But
I
this
did.
particular episode, yeah, it's got music in its thing, the show. And they also did the theme of the Cow and Chicken theme too. It was
Yeah. I think I
amazing.
saw there was a video of that, maybe. I'm not sure. Would you ever do a convention appearance in the UK?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it did. I Am Weasel and Cow and Chicken did air over here on CITV
I
in the
recall, yeah. And
late
Cartoon
90s. Yeah,
Network.
and
It
Cartoon
was
Network. Yes, that's how
yeah,
my
that's the
older
original
brother.
run was Cartoon Network. And it was the UK where it was first relayed to me that it was a hit. They said we want to do more seasons. So I remember the information from Cartoon Network in Atlanta that the UK they showed the numbers and the numbers were big, and so it was more successful in the UK than it was in the United States and in South America. But the
Wow,
UK definitely, yeah, and
I never knew that.
yeah, and also in most of Europe too, Spain and in the Netherlands. It was like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were
The
it was
guy who
big.
voices Chicken in Dutch, I've Dieter. I think I've gotten to know him a little bit. Yeah, he's really
Yeah,
lovely,
yeah,
and
and
he's
also
met Charlie as well.
yeah, that's
Mm.
cool.
Yeah.
Latin America also. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really awesome, the global appeal of a show and the different languages it's dubbed into and stuff like that. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I have no idea what I was about to say, but I literally had something in my head. Again, it happens, it just flies out your head when you're having a good time. But honestly, it's just it was about Cow and Chicken, I think. Yeah, it was about I asked you, would you ever do an appearance in the UK? I
oh
think,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah, I
think
would.
I think Charlie Adler should definitely do an appearance because if the show was like more popular here. If I do remember my question, I'll definitely send it to you over
Okay,
email because
absolutely.
I'm like that there. Um,
Yeah.
NostalgiaCon, I'd like to sort of know a little bit more about this. Now, there was supposed to be a Cow and Chicken panel with you and Charlie on the Saturday evening. My friend, obviously Albert, who you spoke to at the event, he went to it, and then the MC came on stage and said, "Oh, the panel's been cancelled. It's been merged with a Dexter and a Jimmy Neutron one tomorrow." What happened there? I don't.
I mean, I didn't have the scheduling was out of our hands. Basically, it was like delayed on Saturday to the point where if we had had the panel, it would have been after basically when it was closing. So Charlie suggested, well, what about tomorrow, like Sunday? So we actually did the panel, and it ended up being our own panel. Dexter's and Jimmy Neutron was after. So we had our half hour that was planned, and it was great. It was well attended, and some really insightful questions were posed to us. And it was just really great to be with Charlie and Candy and Dee.
It didn't occur to me at the time. I was like, oh yeah, Candy and Dee were the parents. That's why it makes sense that they're on there.
Yeah, it was like a super time travel moment for me to be there, and we're all like 30 years older than we were then.
That's so wholesome. Yeah. That's so wholesome. Awesome. Well, honestly, David, thank you ever so much for coming on my show. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Is there anything you would like to promote, as in a website or any future projects that you've got coming out for you?
I don't have a website. No, I mean, I do have something different that I worked on. A year ago this month, I was in Korea. And I directed a live action television series for a company called NGA Entertainment. They're a toy manufacturer.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, they had the rights to a show called Armor Swords, and it's about regenerated dinosaurs that wear armor, fight a battle against extraterrestrials. It's kind of an interesting idea, and it's just different. I've never directed live action on a green screen, so it was like a unique experience for me, but fun. I loved every second of it. And we're doing the post-production's happening right now, just like proving animation, because there's animation, CG animation with the live action.
Yeah.
And it appears that it's going to be on the air internationally next year, March 2026.
Awesome. I've just remembered what I was going to say to you before.
Okay.
When I interviewed Charlie Adler, he said something about so it was about Story of Me, Jonathan Harris, but he said he was at the Haymarket. I don't know whether he meant in London or Los Angeles, but he said he was doing a press package for Cow and Chicken when it first came out. I'm not sure. Do you remember anything like that? Or
I do. I remember hearing that he was invited to go. That was back in maybe 98.
Was it LA or London?
I believe it was the UK. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. All right, I've definitely got to ask him about that when I next see him. Awesome. Right, well, in that case, I am going to sign off this interview here. To you at home, thank you ever so much for watching this episode of In Conversation with ATF featuring the lovely David Feiss. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did watching it. But don't forget to stay safe, stay happy, stay beautiful, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon. All right? Bye-bye, and cut.